Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. We are back here once again for another Saturday matchup in our 2022 tournament. And this one is certainly an interesting matchup. If you guys are a part of the Facebook pages, and if you're not, join either TMG Entertainment or TMG Trivia for all the updates that don't get put into videos on the league. You guys know that obviously we started out with 16 competitors in this year-end tournament, but as is such, life happens and you can't always plan, no matter how thoroughly you try, for everything that is going to happen. And unfortunately, right before the recording stage, we lost a handful, or not a handful, we lost a couple of competitors due to life situations. This match, as announced in the bracket prediction video, was originally supposed to be Evan DeGraff versus Shannon Briggs, which, if you guys remember, I said was, to me, one of the more interesting matchups because Shannon is a competitor who, at one point in the league, was statistically the best player without a win. Like, just based on fact, he was the best player who hadn't won a match, and now he's won two of them. So that's a great improvement for him. And Evan, of course, is a former champion, so there's always some level of gravitas with that potentiality. But he'd been off for so long that the question was, does playing somebody with real experience now, unlike his last match where he played a pure rookie, does it affect him more than it did the first time coming back after a long break? Well, unfortunately, due to events in Evan's life, he became unable to participate within the match and had to drop from the tournament. So we have instead traded out for maybe even a more interesting scenario, which is Austin Pez Howell stepping in, taking the place, coming in fresh off of a recent victory. And I say this with all due respect, but I would describe Pez, and knowing the motivation that he has internally to want to succeed in this, as desperate, because I know Pez believes in his own mind, and he has shown that he can be one of the best debaters in this league. But at a current record of 3-3 with one knockout, that is certainly not a record that on paper reflects that you are one of the best debaters in this league. So Pez getting this opportunity to step in at the last minute should be definitely looking at this as an opportunity to try and advance himself to the stage that he wants to be at. Same for Shannon. So let's stop wasting time and get to them. Introducing first, we're going to start with, technically, even though he is the higher seed, because he came into this match later with a record of 3 wins, 3 defeats, and 1 knockout, Austin Pez Howell. Austin, welcome back to the Battleground, sir. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good. Coming off a victory recently, getting another chance here in this tournament. And if you recall, the last time I was slotted into a tournament, last second, it was a last chance match to get into the original tournament I would have been a part of. And I just happened to run into a brick wall known as Henry Confidential, who, in all fairness, went on to win the entire tournament and become champion. So, I just happened to face a guy who, was a formidable opponent, obviously, going on to win the title. I have another chance here, as I did then, and I'm not going to waste it.
Absolutely. I was going to say, because obviously there's everything that I said, but there's another layer to this, which is technically, to date, you have actually participated in 2 different brackets for us. Mm-hmm. You were a part of the original 1-0 bracket, in which you were eliminated in the first round by Chad Webb, who, of course, since has gone on to contend for the title. You got that second chance opportunity in the 0-1 bracket of that same tournament, and you took on Henry Sanchez, who, of course, went on to become the still defending champion of the league. So it's not to say that you haven't had tough first-round matchups, but you've had 2 tournaments and you've gone out in the first round. Is this just another match to you, or does a win here mean something more?
No, a win here means everything. I've told you, I play even my exhibitions, as you've seen, like they are title matches. I fight and scrap for every single point. I'm going to use this opportunity. And I think actually going out in those early rounds and facing competitors like Chad, like Henry, in those in such an early career of mine, facing a caliber like that early made me a better player, and it really strengthened my skills and made me really hone my notes and hone how I approach the questions, things like that. So I can't wait to do this, man. I appreciate the extra opportunity, but make something clear, Shannon Briggs, I'm coming for you, and it's not going to be easy.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back and introduce your opponent with a record of 2 wins and 2 defeats. He is Shannon Briggs. Shannon, sir, welcome back to the Battleground. Now, I'm a positive person. I praise everybody who comes in here because I like to see people happy. But the praise that goes to your side, the stats back it up. It is genuine. Your first two defeats, one of which is to the now current number one contender of the league in Amaru Moses. You went to the blind round and lost in both of them. You were the first competitor to have to even play the blind round more than once. And since then, you've taken 2 wins. Does that add any extra level of confidence? Does the switch of opponents have any play on you? How are you feeling coming into this?
Well, I'm coming into this, just, yeah, I'm gonna say it was some confidence as far as like winning back to back games, but I've always tried to kind of like just focus on each game and round to come up. And I'm sorry, it's unfortunate that because of circumstances, of course, it was out of control that Evan wasn't able to participate. I watched some matches of his to kind of do some homework, and he would look like he would be he quite earned the respect that he has as far as the movie background, the players. But when I found out that Austin was going to be the last minute pick, it kind of reminded me of like whenever we kind of had in the past had like kind of like was put together as far as like to sort of last minute to compete each other for a certain spot. And that time I was still kind of like I was still kind of looking for my first win. And like I said, I knew Austin was a very good competitor. I didn't win that tryout to get a spot, but hoping that I was lucky enough to make it to the tournament, lucky number 13. I'm just like I said, I know he will be a tough opponent, but I think I've come this time with a lot more confidence and a lot more. I think more better ability to be able to match him tit for tat.
All right. Well, yeah, for those who may not remember, these two have technically faced off before, as Shannon alluded to, in a one-question playoff. This is a full match. There's more than one question, and let's see how it goes. As I bring Austin back in, we'll go ahead and get into this. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points wins the match. Each round is worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to take the first 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. If after 4 rounds it is tied at 2-2, that will activate the blind round. However, we will deal with that should we have to. In terms of the actual match itself, the questions are worth 1 point. As I said, each competitor has had the questions. They've had their chance to prep. There will be a 60-second opening argument followed by a 2-minute solo pitch. There will be a 4-minute open debate followed by a 60-second closing argument, at which point the time will be finished. Backstage, I have 3 judges in Jake Reese, Zach Shelton, and Chris Diaz. They will join us on screen following the debate, where they will deem a winner based on the arguments. With that said, do you guys have any questions for me, or are you ready to go?
Shannon, if it makes you feel any better, I can imitate Evan's facial expressions and movements while you're talking, if that will make you feel more comfortable. I can do that if you want me to.
No, I'll pass on that.
All right, just offering.
As entertaining it would be, I'll pass on it.
All right.
Also, remember, he does have an action figure collection should you just want to see something entertaining. We have utilized it before.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get into this. And this has been a positive affair so far. Let's turn this into shitting on somebody. John Carpenter is an absolute legend of the industry, and he currently has his name. He hasn't directed anything in a while, but he does have his name attached to something coming out, that being the upcoming Halloween Kills, in which he is a producer. I think he may have contributed to the screenplay. I don't actually know 100%, but that seems like something he would do. And I believe he's composing the film as well, because he composes everything he's involved in. But with that said, Carpenter is a man who, if you remember one of my previous Battleground matches in the title match, to be blunt, I fucked myself out of a point by making the statement that Carpenter's films are either damn near classics or they're fucking awful. Let's talk about the other one. The question is, what is the worst film of John Carpenter's career? Now, behind the scenes, Austin did technically take over the number 4 seed of the tournament. So even though he is higher ranked, because Shannon was the one who was in here from the beginning and we had the whole kind of first part of the production leading into the second, I did give him the edge to choose which questions he went first on. This is something that everyone involved was all right with. Shannon chose to go first on 2 and 4, so Austin is going to be going first on this question. So as I go ahead and bring in the timer, I want to wish you guys both the best of luck, and I will disappear. Austin, the timer starts when you're ready.
Look, I'm a fan of Carpenter, and I would argue that he's had his ups and downs in his career, but he's always making something interesting. And it's funny you should say he hasn't directed in a while, because the movie I picked for this question is, as of right now, the last film he's directed, and that's 2010's The Ward. It's a straight horror film that I got excited for when it came out, because it was John Carpenter returning to a full-on horror movie, not a blending of the genres film. Full-on horror, you get excited. The master of horror come back to do horror, and we got this, an absolutely garbage, boring, passionless film. John Carpenter with this movie went from a pioneer and a trendsetter to just another almost direct-to-DVD type quality horror director. It's a really shame, because he lost his way with this one, and I think there's a reason we haven't seen him in the last dozen years or so directing another film, because of the reception of this. His passion is gone, and as you can see it on screen, and I'll get more into that in just a second.
All right, that'll be time on the round. Shannon, over to you for your opening.
I won't be around the bush. John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors. There's no doubt how much of an influential figure he has been in the horror genre. But by the end of the 1990s, his workmanlike quality and the look of his films became replaced with a clearly burnt out and arguably out of touch sense of camp. Even the most mediocre John Carpenter films are watchable. However, with Ghosts of Mars, Carpenter made a dull, lifeless horror film that cannibalizes from his much better work that I frankly find a chore to get through. I will explain that it has a bunch of problems that could have been fixed in pre-production, as far as like the casting and the special effects, and even problems with the score, which is it's unheard of with John Carpenter, but I feel like this is probably his weakest score. But I will. That is my choice for John Carpenter's first film, and I will explain more in a few minutes.
All right, that's time. Austin, back over to you.
So John Carpenter comes into The Ward with a completely uninspired and frankly done-to-death premise of a bunch of girls in a mental asylum and basically a psychiatric ward, and they are all dealing with some sort of problem, dealing with some kind of entity or spirit that is taking them down one by one. It stars Amber Heard as a secret psycho. Does that make you want to throw up in your mouth? Yeah, me too, when I went back and watched it. Awful. And instead of, like I said, being a trendsetter and a pioneer, he resorts to cliche after cliche after cliche, which is uncharacteristic of him. Cheap jump scares, a really bland score that doesn't come out and make you want to listen to it on its own. A non-titillating shower scene, a dance scene to a 60s lame song, a doctor who may or may not be a creep played by Jared Harris, a skeevy orderly, a stern nurse who doesn't give any leeway to them or is not nice to them, a creepy person in the mirror cliche, hands popping out of dark places while walking around dark hallways. Does all this sound familiar? Well, when you think of a John Carpenter movie, it should be something new, should be something that we want to see, but instead it's literally every other movie you've ever seen with a similar premise. In fact, and I'm going to spoil the movie here, so I apologize if you haven't seen it, a twist at the end, which completely negates everything you've seen by having the twist be that it's all happening in one girl's head, and all the different girls are all her different personalities taking over and being killed off one by one. Does that sound familiar as well? Because it was done 7 years earlier in a movie called Identity, which is a better film, which he literally just rips off the entire premise from there as well. As for Ghosts of Mars, it's a movie I enjoy, albeit on a guilty pleasure level. But when you're talking about his worst films, I think it's a mediocre action film, but it does have its moments. It's got a great cast. You got Natasha Henstridge, Ice Cube, Jason Statham, Pam Grier, Clea Duvall, Robert Carradine. Really fun premise. Was sort of like a zombie action movie on Mars. Really good shootouts. He knows how to make sets, great makeup, and it's a fun little guilty pleasure action film that I enjoy. I was just watching it right before this, but The Word is clearly worse.
And time. All right, Shannon, back over to you, sir.
Okay, well, I'm glad that Austin got a copy of Ghosts of Mars. I don't think the worst of the world got. That was actually a really good one because I think one of the things that immediately dooms Ghosts of Mars is the casting of Tasha Henstridge as the lead. She's objectively miscast and unable to convey the badassness that you mean would be as a lot as this kind of stock and trade for a lot of John Carpenter's protagonists. And you wouldn't believe that Ice Cube had been acting for over a decade with how awkward his performance is as Desolation Jones. Again, a very stupid name. Snake Plissken, he is not, even though he is trying to be that cool. It makes the unforgivable movie crime of wasting Pam Grier. How can you do that? Especially coming off from the Jackie Brown, but she's completely given like a one-note lead authority that's killed off immediately. Again, spoilers for a movie that's almost over 20 years old. The ghosts themselves are nothing but degraded zombies with, I would argue, terrible makeup. I mean, and it has like flashbacks and flashbacks. That's kind of the structure, and it like dissolves to try to speed up like to make it interesting, but it only makes it more distracting. And it's already models a shitty screenplay. You have Marissa director who had showcased fun and kinetic action sequences in films like Big Trouble in Little China, but it's nowhere to be seen in Ghost of Mars because it's the action scenes in that are sluggish and imaginative, and they just every time they do it, just screech the film to a halt. The problem with the Ward is that it came at a time in Carpenter's reappraisal that he had been placed on a legendary pedestal. So anything that came out at that time would be unreasonable expectations, and it was, if it was a immediate masterpiece, it would be considered shit. The Ward is a mediocre film, but a mediocre John Carpenter movie is better than most contemporary Hardwicker's best films, I would argue.
All right, that's time. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and go into the 4-minute open discussion. As always, I like to remind competitors, be respectful of each other, give each other the chance to speak, but also it is a competition, so do your best to get your points in. It's a very fine line, but you guys know how to walk it. So with that said, the timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
Look, Ghosts of Mars is a very misunderstood film. I think it's right there in the title, Ghosts of Mars. It's a silly title. It's not meant to be taken seriously. Like you said, Ice Cube's character's name is Desolation Williams, not Joe's, but Desolation Williams. And I think if you hear that name, I don't know why you would take this movie seriously, which is why people like Ebert and Roper gave the movie 2 thumbs up and a 3 out of 4 and said they saw the tongue-in-cheek sense of it all and they went with it.
Yeah, but I think that, you say that it's tongue in cheek, but I feel like he's done better films with his tongue in cheek as far as like that's being refouled. Like, Escape It from like L.A., I would argue, was him being more tongue in cheek, and that worked more because he has more like venom than his satire on Los Angeles in general. And like you were saying about Amber Heard, as far as like her performance in there, I feel like this was actually one time when Amber Heard was actually a good, well-regarded actress before all of her the private troubles, I will just say. And I feel like her performance and helps like elevate
the problem is that Amber Heard, she's kind of miscast. There's another actress that is in that movie named Danielle Panabaker, who is in The Flash right now. She was in Sky High, who has much more charisma that she shows in the movie with her character, at least what character is given the fact that the twist negates all the character development and it throws them right out the window. But Amber Heard just comes in. She's got a stern look on her face. She's boring. She looks bored, and Carpenter feels bored directing it.
Well, that's subjective as far as like that. Again, I feel like I think Amber Heard is kind of like the main focus of it, and then I think she helps like you like at least believe more of his character. And I feel like Ford, it showed that John Carpenter could go back and work in a low budget film and still have his workman technique that still was there. Like he gave it down.
But what technique? Using the tropes I talked about, where every time it turns to night, the war, there's thunder and lightning outside. That's one of the most played out tropes and cliches you ever seen in your life. Every cliche, like I literally listed off the book, is ones he's using, and that's unusual for a guy coming back to straight horror after 15 years. You have an expectation that he should do better than that.
Yeah, I'm going to explain about that low budget. I think it works with the Ward more, but whereas like Ghosts of Mars had for 2001 $28 million budget, which is pretty. I would say a pretty good mid budget, but you can't see any of that in the film because it's all got dull sets. It's supposed to take place.
I don't think it's still sets at all. Like,
Imaginative
it's real sets, which is something that's missing from now. It's not CGI. It's all practical. Like you said, the actual makeup is great. They got crazy makeup on like hundreds of people. It's Greg Nicotero, the guy who did The Walking Dead right now, and he's done dozens and dozens of horror movies. It's actually really good stuff on the screen. And the ones he did for the Ward was as lazy as the direction of John Carpenter. Literally, the only effects he does is the girl in the movie, the kind of one who's killing everybody again, who is a non even existing entity because of the twist, and it just looks like The Ring, like some dead girl with long black hair. That's lazy.
But that zombie makeup is kind of the main focus of Ghost of Mars, and I feel like that's really let down. Again, you could be so imaginative with all these creatures that you want to show on there, and really, like, there's like, again, like, only want to have like the one main one's like long haired, looks like from a roadie from Cradle of Filth, and that's and pretty much, but have no like characteristics other than that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny you should mention Cradle of Filth. My movie does not have a decent score whatsoever. Ghost of Mars actually has a really cool kind of metal synth score that's actually performed by Anthrax and Buckethead, which is pretty awesome. Shows you that John Carpenter actually cared still about his scores, unlike something like The Ward.
Awesome on paper, but I would say that mixture of rock, whatever, especially during the action scenes, is just so redundant that even on paper would be a cool score. It completely is monotonous and doesn't. And only kind of drones the action sequence that they mostly appear in. It just doesn't work as well as it should. It just
and time. All right, Austin, you got 1 minute left on the round, sir. When ready?
Okay, Ghost of Mars is it's a misunderstood film. Carpenter has said himself he set out to make sort of a campy throwback to like a drive-in grindhouse kind of movie, which is exactly what he made, which is why very smart people like Roger Ebert realize that. And it has the stuff we do like in his movies, the badass anti-heroes like Ice Cube, who's a very charismatic actor, and he's very good in this movie. He discovered somebody like Jason Statham, who was only being used in British movies at that point, realized that he had a charisma too, put him in there. Natasha Henstridge, who's very good in the Species movies, actually she does well in here. I think she stands right up to those guys and stands out as a strong female protagonist, which is something he's also known for. And there's really good practical set design. Like I said, there's crazy nutty scenes with hundreds of people running around in this crazy makeup, doing their thing. The Ward is literally, it's more of a disappointment and the worst because of the expectations you do have John Carpenter coming back to horror, the master of horror. There's not a single scare, not a single bit of heart, not a single bit of passion to be found in the Ward. It's absolutely bored, played out, tired, tropey-filled mess.
And time. All right, and then Shannon, back over to you.
Okay. As far as like you were saying about the Jason Statham and all this, it's cast again. It's wasted. Like usually, again, this good cast on paper is wasted. And again, Natasha Henstridge is kind of she's better as far as like in Species, where she has minimal dialogue, but you can tell on her face whereas this with given with this kind of shitty screenplay, it just doesn't work. And as far as like Ghost of Mars, it only comes by this is much better Carpenter films like Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York. It comes up more of the Resident Evil clone and has the quality of the Paul W.S. Anderson series. But at least both of them try to have interesting action sequences. Carpenter said Ghost of Mars was supposed to be a play on the silly, minus action films of the time. But instead, it is above the level of sci-fi, shallow piece of shit. But it can't even be enjoyed ironically because it's so dull and lacks atmosphere. I'm happy the war exists so that Ghost of Mars isn't John Carpenter's last film. That is the biggest thing I can say, comment I can say about the Ward in general. At least it's not as shitty as Ghost of Mars is.
And time. All right, guys. Great first debate there. I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in the back and bring in our judges for the deliberation. And the only real fact check I have on this round is something that I said at the start. He did not write Halloween, and he does have a based on credit because it's based on his original concept for Halloween. But he did compose the film, which is cool that even at, God, whatever, he must be 107, he's still working on music. That's cool. Follow your passions, man. With these two films being your last two, film clearly was not anymore. With that said, Jake, I'm going to go to you first, sir. Based on the arguments, who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
I got Pez. It was the way he was able to counter in the 4-minute round pretty much everything that Shannon tried to do against or for the Ward. bucket. Or, I'm sorry. Yeah, the way Pez was able to counter.
Got it. I get what you're trying to say. All right, so then it's down to Zach. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I also went with Pez, and it's more because he was able to give more examples of why his movie had more like higher played out cliches. And for that, that's why I went with Pez.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back as we will move on to the next question here in the round. All right. And this question is a viewer submitted question. It was submitted by somebody. If you are a viewer or a player or a judge, or I don't know what else you would be besides those three things, because if you're not a player or a judge, but you're watching this, that does technically make you a viewer. You can submit your question to Movie Battleground. I have an email. It's scrolling there at the bottom, officialaaroncanoll@gmail.com. Send me your questions there. Please include your name on the email, because if I don't know who it's coming from, then I will not use it, especially because we do have competitors that submit, and I don't want anyone getting their own question. But it's always great to have people submit their questions, because sometimes, when you write as many questions as I do, there is a bit of a formula to it, but having other people submit gives us a little more creativity, a little bit of outside thinking. Maybe they go somewhere that I hadn't thought of. And funny enough, the way that it worked out, the question that we have tonight was actually submitted by one of our judges, Mr. Jake Reese. The question is, what is the best song performance in a musical of all time? Is the question on hand. And so with that said, Shannon, you are up first on this one. So the timer will start when you begin speaking.
Well, to pick the best song performance in the musical was an incredibly difficult decision. There are too many great songs performances to choose from throughout the history of cinema. What I did to decide was think of a song performance that not only goes smoothly with the film it's in, but has stood the test of time. Then my choice was clear. Over the Rainbow, sung by Judy Garland in the classic The Wizard of Oz. This performance does not just include an iconic song, but Garland conveys so much in what we love about the character from Dorothy, and forms a character that not only do they just go wonderfully together. And that's why I believe is the best song performance in the musical. And I will see the rest of my time, and we'll explain more later.
All right. Jump that forward a little bit. Oh, that was almost fucking perfect. All right, Austin, back over to you, sir. You have 1 minute on the clock.
Yeah, this is a difficult one to choose from. It's a good question, and I'm usually not the biggest musical fan on the planet, but I do own the one I picked in 4K, and what I picked was Make 'Em Laugh from Singin' in the Rain. This is a true performance in every sense of the word. It is not only a very catchy and fun song sung by Donald O'Connor as Cosmo, but is a true physical performance, so much so that it put the man in the hospital for a week the first time he did it in his one take. And then he had to do it all over again because of a film mishap. It is a true performance from start to finish. It's a big showstopper. It's one that nearly steals the film from the title song of Singin' in the Rain, which is why I went with it. And it still holds up to this day. The setup is that, Cosmo is trying to cheer up Don, Gene Kelly's character, telling that we need to, you just got to go out there and make him laugh when he's kind of in the dumps. And it's about lifting his spirits. And he puts on a performance for the ages. And it's something truly incredible that I'll go into a little more in just a second.
All right. So we have two classics of cinema. With that said, Shannon, back over to you.
Well, not only does the song Over the Rainbow make us understand how Dorothy wishes to be in a place far, far away with no trouble, that she and her dog Toto can stay away from the mean Miss Gulch that's always like wanting that's always saying that Toto's a nuisance and wants to take him away from her. The cinematography and staging of that performance by Garland, it subtly connects the audience, and especially if you're a child, to feel her longing and understand why she would long to be a place like Oz. I feel like the perfect song and performance that immediately gives us sympathy and understanding of that character and what's going to happen to her. And especially if you put behind the scenes about how tough, how the older pressure that was put on Judy Garland, like, I mean, as a young actress, and that would be present throughout her life, as far as like being like always being worked to try to be the best. You understand the song even more with a different layer. The problem with Make 'Em Laugh is that it's a good musical performance in the film that has several greater song and performances. Like, I would say, like, You Were Meant for Me. I think Most Supposed This is a very funny, like, again, physically like performance as well. And of course the singular Singing in the Rain, whereas, I mean, that's been like parodied, or it's been, I mean, referenced throughout the different cinema as far as different movies. And I will say, while Don Connor is a great dancer and he put a lot on the line for that film and that performance, I feel like Judy Garland outshines him with her singing performance. And Over Rainbow stays in your head long after the film's over, while Make 'Em Laugh is eclipsed with much more iconic songs and performances in Singing in the Rain.
All right, I'll take that as time on Shannon's round. Austin, back over to you, 2 minutes.
So the reason why Make 'Em Laugh is so special is really part of Donald O'Connor as a performer and what he puts into it, the heart and soul that he puts into it, how much he's willing to literally suffer for his craft to please the audience, to make something completely memorable. I'll just walk you through it a little bit. Mind you, he does all these things while singing this song. So he has to not only know lyrics to a song and sing it well, but also do the choreography. He starts off by playing the piano, actually playing the piano. He then hops on the piano, jumps off the piano, dances on his knees all around Gene Kelly, jumps up again, gets carried around on a wood board. He dives under a couch, ducks under another piece of wood, gets smacked by the piece of wood in the back of the head, doing some more slapstick comedy, runs into a brick wall behind a door, then proceeds to continue singing the song while missing lyrics here and there while he's adjusting his nose and his jaw like they're broken. Again, doing the physical performance as well as the vocal performance. He then does a whole choreographed number with a dummy on a couch, back and forth, up and over the couch. He then, to top it all off, after he spins around in a circle on the carpet, he runs up and does 2 spectacular backflips off of an actual wall. He runs up the wall, does a backflip, runs up another wall, does a backflip, and tops it all off by running and jumping physically through another piece of drywall, all while stumbling back out, finishing the performance. It's a truly spectacular number that has never been replicated or duplicated in anything. It's funny that you say that, you know, things like Singing in the Rain, the actual title song, gets spoofed and kind of parodied and done over and over again. There's a reason why nobody has really attempted very often to do Make 'Em Laugh, because it's such a difficult thing to do because of all the physicality as well as the vocal performance. The only thing I have against Over the Rainbow, you know, if you had said best song in a musical of all time, you might have an argument there. The performance itself, it's really just her sitting there like on a wagon, just singing the song. I mean, there's not much to it. And again, yours kind of gets eclipsed as well with the montage of If I Only Had a Brain, If I Only Had a Heart, these more dynamic numbers with a little more movement, with the actual color, and with the things that take over the rest of the film.
And time. All right, so we are going into the 4-minute open discussion. Time starts when the first person speaks.
You were saying about how, like, you were saying my song gets eclipsed by like other songs. Where I would say, like, where the Make 'Em Laugh, like in the first like 20 minutes of Singing in the Rain, yeah, it gets easily eclipsed by a bunch of other performances and choreography and songs throughout that film. So I would say, yeah, if after the end, if you ask somebody to remember.
Well, that's the nature of a musical. It's whatever, you know, somebody in the audience is going to connect with. I'm talking about a thing that connects with people literally 7 years later. They watch it and their jaws are on the floor as Donald O'Connor's jaw is being wrenched around a lot. And that's the whole thing. Yours plays well on a vinyl. It plays well on the radio. It's a nice song to listen to on a calm day. But mine is both a great song and a great physical performance. Again, the performance is a nice vocal performance. There's nothing physical about yours, though. There's nothing going on in the scene. It's just her sitting.
No, mine's, I feel like it's more than physicality than jumping around, doing all these kind of like super physical things as far as like performance. Whereas like you can be a lot more subtle as far as like Over Rainbow, where it's just, I mean, where she can be able to like just, you know, you said it's like a small scene. Not, I mean, where she walk around, but she conveys so much by like walking around her like loneliness or her sadness about like possibly losing her dog, possibly, and think about like the great wide world. And
it's funny, you're making it seem like more kind of important to the movie than it is, when the producers of the movie actually wanted to cut the scene because they thought it would put the audiences to sleep. That is a real fact.
Shocker, producers are wrong. I mean, that's not usually in general. Producers make wrong decisions.
But if it was this big, over the top, like the greatest song ever put to film, they wouldn't be considering cutting it for time, Shannon. That's my point. And meanwhile, mine is a showstopper that literally leaves the audience clapping, wanting more. That's the point.
I would say if it was, I mean, I would say if it was cut out of that movie, it would feel like a lot of a lesser movie, even with, like you said, with the other songs or whatever. You would feel you would be completely missing that complete introduction to that character. She would be just like another, another like girl going to the wide, wide world, but you wouldn't know understand the thought process of her like before it.
I think we get plenty of that. She's a misplaced character or somebody who yearns for more, and just the scenes before that when she's, we see she's not a farm girl. She stumbles around when she's trying to do her chores. I mean, we get enough of that character without her fully explaining it in these lyrics. Again, I'm glad you're able to interpret these lyrics, but and it makes for a good song. But again, mine's a full-on performance.
Okay, well, again, I'd say it's more of a mixture between the song and like what's going on with that. And I feel like, while the performance like aspect of Make 'Em Laugh is very impressive. Again, the song itself, again, I would say is it's not just it only accomplishes. I mean, you say kind of going on with the story, but I feel like I mean, again, it doesn't. I mean, add much. I mean, compared to the rest of these other songs. Again, like I said, most of Supposes, I would say would be more of a song that's more comedic, more physical. I tell you between Donald Connor and Gene Kelly, as far as like that, and it more explains about these two characters and that kind of like how they are buddies, but you can get along. That I think that's where it's the kind of stuff works more with it than like just the one scene.
That's what makes it so great, is you get to see how far his character of Cosmo would go, how far he would go for this friendship, for his buddy to cheer him up after he's lost some jobs, after he's had a string of bad luck. You get to see, and it's one of the reasons I think this performance alone is the reason why he won a Golden Globe for his performance. And I truly think it's because of this performance of this song, both the vocalization and the physicality.
Again, I feel like that's very impressive. But I feel like you don't. Again, there's ways also we have an impressive music performance without having to be super physical as far as like that. And I feel like Judy Garland, a great actress and a great musical actress, can convey that in the Over Rainbow. And
time. All right, so we're going to go on to the closings. Shannon, you're up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I ask you to think what appears in your head when you hear Over the Rainbow. I would say 9 out of 10 times you will probably think of the movie The Wizard of Oz, of course, and you will think about Judy Garland walking along at Kenson's farm with her dog Toto. It's not flashy or highly choreographed like Make 'Em Laugh, but it does more in the subtlety of the camera and Garland's performance. Now think what appears when you hear Make 'Em Laugh. Can you picture that musical performance as clearly? I think not. The best song performance lasts the test of time, and the musical performance of Over the Rainbow is closing in on almost 100 years of since it was performed in that film. That's not just great. That's a classic film and a classic song performance in a musical. I will concede the rest of my time.
All right, Austin, I will turn it back over to you, sir. You have 1 minute left on the clock for the round.
Again, he's making the argument that Over the Rainbow is a classic song. I do not disagree with that. A song itself that makes you think of the movie. That's great and wonderful. But the question asks for what is the best song performance? And with all the pieces put together, it's absolutely Donald O'Connor's performance of Make 'Em Laugh and Singing in the Rain. And it's a movie that a performance that completely steals the show. It's the one thing you remember other than the title, of the movie, but you remember Make 'Em Laugh all the way. You will never forget it once you see it, and that's why it's never been imitated or duplicated. As for Over the Rainbow, there's that one guy who did the Hawaiian ukulele version that became way more popular for a long time than the original Judy Garland version. And it stands a testament of what it's done. It's the magic of films. It's the magic of movies. What Donald O'Connor had to deal with, being bedridden for a week of exhaustion and having to do it all over again, dealing with Gene Kelly behind the scenes, who was a perfectionist, having to do it multiple times, and just dealing with the overall production. It makes you really appreciate the performance of what he did to steal the show and steal the movie.
and time. All right. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you both in the back and bring in our judges. Once again, only a small amount of fact checking here. Again, myself, I realized as they were speaking that the song is called Over the Rainbow, not Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That's what I get for not looking things up before I type them in. Also, the other quick fact check here is on the story that Austin gave. The broad strokes of the story are true, but the positions were the thing that's incorrect. The person who wanted the scene removed was the head of MGM Studios, Louis B. Mayer, who was not actually an active film producer, and he was not an active producer on this movie. He was the head of the studio that financed it. He wanted it removed. Now, the reasoning is correct. He wanted it removed because he felt that it slowed down the movie and that the type of performance that it was would go above kids' heads who he felt the movie was being made for. However, the producer of the film, Mervyn LeRoy, and the director, of Victor Fleming, fought to keep the song in the film, and eventually they did win out. So the broad strokes of the story are correct, but it was not the producer of the film who wanted it out. It was the studio head. That said, Zach, I go up to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I went with Pez for this one, and it's more because he just went. I liked how he went so in detail of behind the scenes of like what everything that was going on in Make 'Em Laugh, and for me, that's why he gets the point for me.
All right, and then Chris, down to you.
Yeah, this is tough because as a musical lover fan, this is a tough topic with as well. So he went into the detail and made them laugh. So he talked about the actual performance and his knock that was involved with the whole, you think of the song, you don't think of the performance, but he mentioned what the actor made them laugh went through with the hospital stuff. He got so many knocks again. Such a good argument here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, judges. I'll go ahead and put you in the back and bring the competitors back in as we move on to question number 3. And going into question number 3, on the heels of the recent announcement that Pixar would be making another sequel, as Inside Out 2 is a thing that is happening, and also following recent comments that were made by studio head and director Pete Docter on the fact that he's basically publicly acknowledged that the last few years under Lasseter, which were heavily riddled with sequels, were an attempt to capitalize on their previous 10 years of success and make money, which is something he defends because as a studio, you have to make money. And I don't disagree with him, especially because their originals at the time were doing less than the sequels. However, just because something can create success doesn't mean it needs to exist. And that argument has been used a lot for a sequel for Inside Out 2. While a lot of people are very excited about the film, there are a lot of people that are asking the question, why does something like Inside Out need a sequel? So let's play revisionist history with that concept and ask the question, which Pixar film that got a sequel or prequel should not have gotten one? Now, I want to make clear to the judges that there was no general restrictive approach to this question. Again, these competitors can, because it's a little more open-ended, they can interpret the question in any so which way, but the general concept is, why should a sequel or prequel to the movie they selected not exist? So they're not necessarily going to be arguing the negatives of a film. If somebody doesn't argue why something is a negative, don't hold that against them. It's about why there shouldn't have been a sequel. With all that said, though, Austin, you are up first. So I'll go ahead and bring up the timer for you, and it'll begin when you start speaking.
Pixar had a near flawless reputation beginning with Toy Story, and for a very, very long time. In fact, I would say for roughly 15 to 16 years until they came up against an absolutely awful film that should not exist. And I'll explain why in just a minute, but it's a movie from 2011 called Cars 2. It's a complete and utter cash grab, transparently commercial, and the first Pixar film that feels like it was just made to pull in merchandising dollars and does not have the heart or passion of any of the other Pixar movies. It took a studio that, like I said, was completely flawless up to that point. Every movie had been a critical success and a commercial success, both for the right reasons. And this is the first one that was a complete and utter disaster on screen, and it ruined a reputation and it really started a somewhat decline of a film or film studio that was pretty flawless up to that point.
All right, and that is time. Shannon, back over to you.
Pixar has created some of the most groundbreaking and emotionally deep and intimate films of our lifetimes. That's pretty, I would say it's no argument there. These films have contained terrifically layered characters who are both funny and also relatable. They also have their best films have created wonderful narratives that begin and end so perfectly that adding onto them can only hurt that narrative. And that's why I'm going with a film that's beloved, Monsters Incorporated. That's my example. It's a film that got a prequel that not only felt unnecessary, but it weakens the original film and its characters by existing. Again, like as far as like the idea of being a cash grabber, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be revolve around only on films that are deemed like critical, like failure. Right? It can also be the problem of trying to build too much on an already perfect thing, and I will explain more in a few more minutes.
All right, and that is time. Austin, over to you.
So like I said, up into Cars 2, all the movies were positive. This is the first one that was rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, 39%, and for good reason. It's an absolute, like I said, mess of a cash grab that took, they looked at the numbers, saw what the most popular character was toy-wise in Mater, made him the main character, which is problem number one. And problem number two is that there's literally just no heart to the film whatsoever. You took an interesting premise of Cars, and what should have happened is instead of doing just a cash grab sequel film, they should have done kind of what they're doing right now and just had a TV show. Have a TV show aimed at kids, set in this universe like they're doing with the Mater Road Tales or whatever it's called, and just have it set in this universe because it's an interesting premise for what it is. But aim it at kids, put it on the Disney Channel, put it on some cartoon network type thing, and just let kids run with it if that's what you want to do, and keep it a cash grab, sort of like a Thomas the Tank Engine, a Paw Patrol type thing. You could do that with Cars, and I'd have no problem with that. The problem is that Pixar's legacy has been forever tarnished by a movie like this, where it showed the audience, and which is the most important thing, and the adult audiences taking their kids to these movies expecting a certain level of quality and getting this instead. That's the reason why it should not exist, period. And they should have gone an alternate route, either with just some straight to DVD, like I said, TV stuff, or just some little short films or whatever. If you wanted to keep, again, capitalizing on that, that's fine, as with all these properties do. Pixar had done the sequels already with Toy Story 2 and 3. They stand out above. Most people like Toy Story either 2 or 3 more than the original, so it wasn't a problem of them doing a sequel. It was the problem that there was no passion put into it, and it showed you could capitalize off a lazy film. Monsters University doesn't do any harm to the original Monsters University, Monsters University doesn't do any harm to Monsters Incorporated. It's just simply exploring Sully and Mike's relationship and kind of how they become partners, and it's a perfectly fine little college comedy, and it's at least up to the standards of a Pixar film. It's very, very good. 80% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And time. All right, Shannon, back over to you.
Okay, I'm going more in the as far as like Monster University, and what I feel like is the main problem about it is that it commits several of the mistakes that prequels fall into, and that Monsters Incorporated does a wonderful job of structuring Mike and Sully's friendship and their classes and personalities and attitudes about being a monster. That Monsters University kind of revisiting that origins of that friendship, it feels redundant. And Monster University revels in all of the cliches of the college comedies, and it is lazy if you do nothing about other than just revel in them, but not subvert them or anything. And in do so, and it makes it predictable and perfunctory. University has a great opportunity to expand on why Randall hates Mike and Sully so much, but that character arc is underdeveloped and overshadowed by gag after gag, and it's hit or miss. None of the characters introduced in University are as interested as the ones introduced in Inc. That film fails in feeling like a necessary addition to the practically perfect first film. Now, Cars it needs sequels because I will say, while not, I would agree that it's not a great film, but I feel like it's just that idea of Cars is just so fucking weird and crazy, and just one film I feel like cannot like contain that weirdness or whatever. And again, like you say, well, Cars 2, but going to a spy kind of chase, whatever, is definitely a weird, an interesting and weird U-turn to make for a franchise. I mean, people complain about Cars 2 about Mater, and he's the weakest part of the first Cars movie, but we need more focus on not just Mater, but the world to make it more have more depth. Whether that worked or not is your opinion, but Cars needed to benefit with more fleshed out world and characters. Monsters Inc. already had a perfect balance of fleshed out world and characters. So Monster University just cheapens and lessens the first film by introducing a bunch of characters we just don't care about.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer starts when the first competitor speaks.
We're not introducing characters in Monsters University. We're revisiting characters from a different timeline. There's nothing wrong with doing that in a prequel. There's movies like X-Men First Class that do that perfectly fine, exploring, where things either went wrong or went right with the character balances, like in that movie with, Xavier and Magneto, exploring like a friendship. And there's nothing wrong with exploring the origins of a friendship, especially when it's a good story about two sort of adversaries becoming friends and figuring out the dynamic on how to work as a team.
Yeah, but I like say you bring up several films that have kind of used that same template so it doesn't feel novel when you introduce it again into a film that it introduces again these like characters clash only to like be buddies at the end of the film. We've seen that trope used so many times that even they seeing it even in
what else would you want from a prequel if people would complain if you didn't have John Goodman and Billy Crystal coming back as those characters? You have to bring those characters back, and it's a voice performance, so you don't feel like it's aged or anything. And it's just exploring a little bit of their backstory. There's nothing wrong with that when it's done really well. Like I said, there's plenty of prequels that have done that perfectly fine.
Yeah, but you were saying about Cars needing a series. I feel like Monsters Incorporated, which I feel already has started and made a series going on, I feel that's the best route. Like go from there and like explore more about that world after the fact that people
what they're doing right now.
Streams that are needed. It's happiness. Like how's that completely
change that world? The difference is that when Pixar went back to this world of Monsters Inc., they made a good quality film they've actually put some thought and some heart into, and then now they're making the TV series, the Monsters at Work thing, and they're still bringing back the same cast to explore more of that world post Monsters Inc. They're doing the thing without failing first. That's the difference. The problem with Cars is that they failed first, then tried to revive a dead franchise that adults didn't care about anymore. Only ones who did were like 3- and 4-year-olds, which is why you should have just made it like a Disney Channel TV show to explore this world.
Well, I feel like that again, like it's one of them things where I mean, Cars again, it's just a weird concept, and I just say that
I agree. It's a bad movie.
I feel like if you had just a critical kind of failure with it, it would have to have a sequel to redo something different to try to fix the wrongs and fix the problems of that first one. And I feel like at least trying to come up with a new kind of like the kind of out of the box thing as far as like trying to like put like it's change the genre, and also with the third one as well as trying to like kind of be more introspective as far as like Lightning McQueen, like a character that was very unlikable.
Yeah, the third movie is trying to fix the problems of the second movie that had already tarnished a great reputation. That is my point. But they're working backwards to that point, trying to fix something that has been broken, a broken wheel, as you will, a flat tire. The difference with Monsters Incorporated is that they made a good movie to follow up, and I'm sure they're going to make a good TV series now. That's the difference. It didn't feel like some kind of cheap cash grab. They actually put some heart into that movie. The games in the movie are a lot of fun. The characters are given a lot of thought, and there's still, again, that passion you can feel in that movie because they were trying to bounce back from a failure like Cars 2. That's the point. They're trying to fight back.
But Monsters University, I mean, again, it didn't add. I don't feel like after that came out, where it was kind of like immediately like kind of like forgotten. Like it feel like it was inferior to that first one so much that I was understanding why we do probably do a series, because they feel like people probably didn't really need to know about the origins.
I'd rather have a good movie that gets forgotten than a movie that completely destroys a studio. I'll tell you that.
I was going to say, I still think the Cars movies were pretty profitable enough that they were decided that, yes, they were going to do sequels to it. And they, again, do more with ideas as far as like to expand on that world.
And time. All right. Oh, wrong button. We're going to go into the 1 minute closings. With that said, Austin, you are up first. I'll give you those 3 seconds back, and it'll start then when you begin.
Yeah, Monsters University, it at least still has that classic Pixar charm that we have. I'd much rather have a good movie that sort of is in the middle of a Pixar than a flat out absolute disaster that did more destruction to a studio that basically does more harm than good. That's the problem with this one, is that you were coming off of classics like WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, again, another sequel. They knew how to make sequels. And then you have Cars 2, which completely shits the bed. Sorry for a family-friendly conversation. And then they had to bounce back with stuff like Brave, Monsters University, and then Inside Out, which is one of their best movies. It showed they had maybe at least learned a little bit from that mistake they did. The reason why Cars 2 should not exist or should have been channeled into some kind of different avenue is it was the most damaging to Pixar's reputation of being this prestigious, top quality, even in sequels with Toy Story 2 and 3, top quality entertainment for both adults and children. Instead, they made a mindless movie that's convoluted for kids, grating for adults, and was an absolute disaster for a pretty great company.
And time. All right, and then Shannon, back over to you.
Okay, there's no doubt that Cars is an inferior movie to Monsters Inc. in practically every way. That inferiority is exactly why Cars 2 and Cars 3 needed to exist. To give Lightning McQueen a full circle realization from being a cocky rookie to the wise veteran that helps make Cars, the first one, a better film in retrospect. Not every great film needs a continuation, and Monsters Incorporated's greatness is lessened with a film that is just fine. It's just, fine is not what the world and the characters of that world deserve. It is, like I said, I feel like that kind of thing works more as a series, but that's where you can expand more on the ideas of Monsters Incorporated and that kind of stuff. But I feel like going back and doing a prequel, it just cheapens the magic and the appeal of that first film, and that's why I picked it.
And time. All right, guys, another great argument. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back and bring the judges in for the deliberations. So going into the fact check, as was aforementioned, both of these series have actually gone on to be in television. Monsters Inc. has Monsters at Work, which was the first Disney animated full television series that they released to Disney Plus. It had a season of 10 episodes come out last year, and a second season is currently in production of the show. Cars has had technically 2 different television series. For years, it had a series of shorts that were called Cars Tunes. It was split into 2 different production sets. One was Mater's Tall Tales, in which there were Cars shorts in which Mater was the lead. And though it's not confirmed, it is, based on my research looking it up, believed to be the thing that may have convinced them to go with Mater as the lead in Cars 2, because people liked the shorts. There was also a second set of shorts called Tales from Radiator Springs, which were made after the second one was released and put the focus back on Lightning McQueen. And then recently, Cars on the Road was just released on Disney Plus. This is also a series of shorts about Mater and Lightning McQueen going on a road trip. And though it only does have 11 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, it is actually the highest reviewed thing in the franchise at 92%, with an average score of 7 out of 10 from critic reviews. The other thing that I was fact-checking is the claim that Cars 2 ruined Pixar. Now, obviously, that is a subjective comment, and whether or not you agree with that is on you. But to present the facts behind the claim, Cars 2 is the lowest rated film at 39%. However, for what it's worth, the next lowest is Cars 3 at 69%, which is still a fresh rating, meaning to date, Cars 2 is the only negatively rated film released by Pixar. The movie also did turn a profit and gross more than Cars 2. And on a creative impact, the film was directed by John Lasseter, who would not direct a film for the studio following this and would leave the company a few years later amid scandals of sexual harassment, which means Cars is not the worst thing he did to this studio. With that said, though, Chris, I'm going to take it up to you. Who did you vote based on what argument?
This is a good argument. Back and forth. I went back and forth, and to the end of it with Pez, I think he made a solid argument about COD ruined the legacy of Pixar. He made what it's done to Pixar, what the Mater scene making Mater thing. I think that Shannon does bring a good detail about making COD more weirder. I just think I managed to defend Monster University a little bit better, mentioning the game, mentioning how funny it is, how a good movie. So Pez.
All right, and then Jake, down to you.
I also have Pez here. The opinions were super tight, so it ultimately came down to what the facts are, and with that first Rotten score and the 39 versus the 80, Pez did it with that.
All right, well, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you backstage because your winner by the final score of 3-0 in a knockout, Austin Pez Howell taking the victory. Austin, this opening round of the tournament has been for lack of better term, to use the word that was used in our bracket prediction, a bloodbath. There have been multiple knockouts, and you are on the winning end of another one tonight. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I had a knockout in my last match. I have a knockout in this one. I told you I would have a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe you just have to back me up against the wall, and I just come out fighting and clawing. But that's what happens. I said I would not end my regular season with a losing record, and I fulfilled that promise. And I came into tonight saying to myself I was not going to lose again in a last chance tournament as I did previously, even though it was to Henry. But I did what I said I was going to do. Look, Shannon's a good player. He's a nice guy, but I was on a mission here. I was determined to fulfill my mission.
Absolutely. Well, the mission does continue as you move on into the next round, and your competitor, somebody who was not in a knockout situation, they had to play into the blind round. You will be taking on Alan Shepard, who took out Alex Martinez in the first round of the tournament. Alan currently 3-1. What are your thoughts on Alan? What do you know about him? How do you feel about the matchup?
No, I am familiar with him. I believe I've judged a match or two of his, so I have actually live, watched him compete. So I won't need to necessarily go back and do too much research because I've seen him do it in real time. And yeah, he's a strong competitor. He's kind of like Jordan Owens. He's got this sort of laid back attitude. He's kind of off the cuff, but he manages to get the points in there and string together some really good arguments. So yeah, he's going to be a tough one. Dr. Spaceman, right? So it's Pez versus Dr. Spaceman. That should make for a very interesting matchup. But I look forward to the challenge, and whether or not I'm able to get the win, I was happy I was able to enter in this, do very well, and again somewhat end the season, whether or not it ends in my next match on a positive note, and get some good wins in there. If nothing for my own ego, Aaron, you know me. Come on, I got to have something going into this.
Yes. The ego is all there. With That's that right. said, sir, congratulations.
I'm trying to be nicer, Aaron. I'm trying. Okay,
you're definitely trying.
But don't back me into a corner. I'll knock your ass out. That's all I have to say.
I do what the game wills, and we will will it to see you next time, sir. Take care of yourself till then, as I bring in your opponent. And Shannon, we were talking behind the scenes before we kind of cut to the interview part of this, and I said that this match, and I do very much feel this match is just a case of when two competitors approach the situation differently, but with good arguments on both sides. And unfortunately, in this case, it is worst look possible for you, but I think the arguments themselves for the people who watch the match, it won't reflect that. So aside from the fact that losing sucks, we all know it. How do you feel coming out of this?
I was gonna say, it's like I said, I didn't feel like like a 3-0 like match or anything like that. Like I said, it felt like like you said, the people that watch this or whatever will see that it was like that I did not like go easy on Austin at all. Like I had on during this match, so that turned out that he was able to be more convincing to the judges when it mattered. So, I mean, that's the breaks. I mean, like I said, I knew it was going to be a tough order to whenever I saw that I was going to end up facing him. So, like I said, all I could do was just go and do the best I could and just see how it went.
Absolutely, sir. And with everybody else that we've had in this tournament, as I kind of stated at the start of it, from this point on, because we're nearing the end of the season, there's only so many slots left for matches. When a competitor does lose, that would be the end of their season. However, this match is a bit of a weird instance. As I said, behind the scenes, we had one competitor, there was a dropout. Obviously, Austin came into this with less prep time, but on your end, there was a switch of answers, and he did switch all 4 answers, so there was a level of preparation there. And so whenever somebody is affected in a behind-the-scenes nature that's out of their control, I like to extend an olive branch, so to speak. Last year, you and Austin were on the receiving end of that with the opportunity to try and play in for a second chance in the tournament. My olive branch this time is, if you would like, I will give you the opportunity to play one more match before the year's over to try and end the year on a positive note. Now, with that said, you can walk off, take the rest of the year off, and come back next year fresh-faced and ready, but it is up to you if you would like to take one more match before 2022 is over.
Well, this is an interesting surprise, Aaron. I would say that sure, I will say I will. Like I would love to have one last ride, as they say, for this year of Movie Battleground and participate in our match. Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Well, more details on that for you will come sooner than those watching at home, although you will get those details soon enough as well. Shannon, it was a solid performance. Condolences for the loss, but we will see you sooner rather than later, and then we'll see you when you return, sir. Thank you.
Pleasure always, Aaron.
And I'll put you in the back. And guys, that is it for another match in this battleground. We are moving through it, and at the rate that we're getting the knockouts, we're moving through it rather quickly. It has been a hell of a tournament, but Austin does pull out a well-earned win, and that's always the balance in knockouts. Is the instinct is you want to offer support to the person who has lost because it sucks to lose. And while I do genuinely feel like tonight Shannon put in a performance that isn't worthy of the score, on the opposite side, Austin put in a performance that is worthy of his score, and he played great, and he had his points succinct and ready, and he is taking full advantage of this opportunity to move into the next round. And I look forward to seeing what he does. That said, though, guys, thank you so much for being here, checking the match out. If you have not already, check out all the other matches in the Movie Battleground. We have one master roster on the page of our playlist. That's what the word's called. We have a playlist on the page with all the previous matches, and we have a playlist for the previous tournament matches for this specific tournament. So if you just want to catch up on all the matches that have happened already, we're 5 into it now. Or no, this is 6, I think. Whatever. You can check them out on the page. Next week, we have another tournament match going up, and it is another instance where we had a replacement player. Sinister Alec Miller retains his spot in the tournament, but the number 10 seed, unfortunately, Andy Sweet, due to job-related circumstances, became unavailable. So similarly to Austin, fresh off of a recent win, Noah McCausland is going to get the opportunity to step into that slot and try and make his way through the tournament. That will go up next Saturday. Going up tomorrow, we have 2 returning players, both of whom have had a bit of time off since their last match. Tyler Birch and Malcolm Lay are coming back looking to pick up a win and progress to one final match within the year. That said, I want to thank my competitors. Congratulations to Austin. Thank you to Shannon for being here. Thank you to my judges, Jake, Chris, and Zach, for being here with us tonight. And on behalf of everyone here at the Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll. We will see you next time. Take care, everybody.